Today, I'm building one of the smallest ecosystems ever made. But there's a catch. I'm not adding the animals today. In fact, if I added them right now, this tank wouldn't be ready for them at all. This 10-gallon aquarium is going to become a miniature Hawaiian lava pool ecosystem for the ʻōpae ʻula shrimp. They're tiny red shrimp that live in brackish water. This means the water is not fully fresh water and not fully salt water, so it's somewhere in between. And what makes this tank different from a normal aquarium is that the most important part of the ecosystem is not the shrimp. It's the stuff you can barely see. The algae, the biofilm, the bacteria, the tiny living layer that grows slowly on the rocks and glass. That is what I'm trying to build first. So before I ever add the shrimp, I have to build the environment that will support them. First, I had to unbox the tank and get everything ready. I went with a 10-gallon tank because it's still small, but gives me more stability than a tiny jar or a 1-gallon setup. Smaller tanks can work, but the tiny amounts of evaporation can change the salinity pretty quickly. And with brackish shrimp, stability is the whole point. I also got a lid for the tank because I have cats and I do not trust them around any open top shrimp tank or any open top thing at all. It also helps with evaporation. As you can see from this terrible unboxing video, sorry, it's my first time. I got salt, black substrate, calcium carbonate, black lava rocks, and some macroalgae. So the first thing I did, after washing down the whole tank of course, was put down the black substrate. After I put down the substrate, I added some calcium carbonate rocks around the tank, trying my best to be an aquascaper. After putting those down, I forgot I didn't even put down the black lava rocks, so I went ahead and did that here. And this is what I came up with. This is probably the most important visual part of the tank, but it is also functional. Lava rock has a lot of texture and surface area, which gives algae and biofilm more places to grow. And for these shrimp, that matters because they spend a lot of their time grazing on those surfaces. I'm trying to avoid making a tall tower though. I want the rocks to be low, stable, and not stacked directly against the glass. That way it's easier for them to clean, safer if I ever move the tank, and less likely to collapse or trap anything underneath. The goal is not to make a dramatic mountain, the goal is to make a stable grazing surface. After I finished that, I put the macroalgae on the top of the mini volcano I tried so hard to build. So once I had everything where I wanted it to be, it was time to add the water. But remember, this is not fresh water, and it is not fully salt water like the reef tank either. This tank uses brackish water, so I mix my RODI water with marine salt to a much lower salinity than my reef tank. My saltwater aquarium is around ocean strength, but this tank is closer to the half-strength seawater. That is one of the things that makes this ecosystem so interesting. It sits in a weird middle zone between freshwater and saltwater. And because there are no fish going into this tank, and no big filter system, the whole setup is going to work very differently from a normal aquarium. I'm not trying to create a tank that depends on heavy feeding, filtration, and constant maintenance. I'm trying to create a slow, stable ecosystem built around microlife. That means this tank needs time. Right now, it may look like I just built an empty tank full of rocks and sand, but over the next few weeks, the surfaces inside this aquarium should start changing. The rock and glass should begin to grow a thin layer of algae and biofilm. It might look like a dusty brown or green film, and normally in an aquarium, people might want to clean that off. But in this tank, that film is the point. That is the food source. The shrimp going into this tank are called ʻōpae ʻula, also known as the Hawaiian red shrimp. They are tiny, hardy brackish shrimp, and they're known for doing well in very low maintenance setups when the tank is stable and mature. If you just heard that popping noise a second ago, that was actually my shrimp from my reef tank snapping its claws. It must have got jealous that I was talking about getting new shrimp. Alright, now let's get back to the video. But low maintenance does not mean zero planning. If I added the shrimp into a perfectly clean, brand new tank, there'd be not much for them to graze on. So instead of rushing, I'm going to take my time and let this tank sit with a light on for several weeks and allow the ecosystem to start waking up on its own. That is the weird part about this build. The tank has to grow before animals can go in. I'm not adding ammonia like I would for a normal fish tank cycle. I'm not adding fish food or trying to create a big waste processing system. The shrimp have very low bioload, so the goal here is not to build a huge bacterial colony for fish. The goal is to let the tank mature. Light, time, rock surfaces and stable brackish water. That is the foundation. Over the next few weeks, I'll be watching for the first signs of life on the surfaces. Algae on the glass, biofilm on the rocks, and the slightly aged look that tells me this tank is no longer sterile. Once that happens, I'll be able to order the shrimp, and that will be part 2. For now, this is just day 1 of my tiny Hawaiian lava pool ecosystem. No shrimp yet, no fish, no plants, just what I added. Now, we wait for algae. So, if you want to see the shrimp finally go into the tank and learn more about how this ecosystem works, make sure to like, subscribe, and follow along for part 2.